Welcome to the show. Let's talk to Malcolm Graham Woods. He's an oil analyst, an oil expert, and he runs Malcy's blog. Malcy, welcome.
Morning, Moose. Nice
right, this is the first part. We've got two-part bucket list. You were here, according to my analytics, on February the 1st. And here we are, September the 4th close. Let's pull up the stocks, just if anyone's watching for the first time. These were your securities, your oil stocks you put in your bucket list. Quite a few negatives at this point. We obviously had a fantastic year last year. Are all of these stocks still in your bucket list before we sort of go into the detail?
No, we've lost two. We've lost Ithaca because that got taken over.
At a premium?
At a big premium.
Good.
I mean, that was the biggest winner last year, so the market clearly knew what was going on there. It was up 550% this year, and then another 20-odd% when it was taken over. And Bowleven also leaves the sector because it's effectively been taken over. In insurance parlance, it would be called in runoff.
Right.
They're just running off the assets that are in Bowleven. So we will come back to Bowleven later when I talk about VAG. But
understood. Well, let's kick off then. Let's start with Hurricane Energy, down 42% since the last bucket update. What's gone wrong?
Well, nothing's gone wrong as such. I mean, there was a bit of a shenanigans, but the bottom line, the underlying for Hurricane is still absolutely fantastic. I'm really confident that you'll make a lot of money, and even more money from this area. What happened in the middle there was they raised $530 million. They made the discovery, so if we had a chart which was another year back, you'd see that it was also, something like the second or third biggest performer last year. And they got to the stage, the shares were 60, 65p. And then people suddenly realised that they've got a development coming up. This is west of Shetlands, called Lancaster, and the surrounding areas. But they would need, because they own it 100%, they would need to pay for the development of it. So, as I said, they raised $530 million, which is a huge achievement. They raised it at a slightly lower level than I think most people would have liked. They had a slight hiccup with a warrant issue in the middle of it there. So people come to me if they've been holders and so on and say, do you still believe it? Absolutely, 100% believe it. I think that the great thing about this is that this financing was to do a thing called EPS, Early Production System. So we're going to get lots of news. The Early Production System means that they'll be producing oil from Lancaster Field in hopefully the first half of 2019. So over the next few months, we're going to see lots of announcements. Will be announcements about where the FPSO is. We'll see announcements about the final investment decision, which is effectively already made. They've got the field plans, and of course, various other. Next spring, we'll see bits of kit arriving. On site. Thousands and thousands of tons of cement to start up the buoying system and so on. So, I understand why people are a little impatient. My valuation was well in excess of 100p. That hasn't changed, and so I'm very happy with Hurricane.
Understood. Let's move on to Sound Energy. According to my crib sheet, down 34% since the last.
Well, you can see what happened with Sound, and that turned out to be the well that they were drilling in Italy, called Badile, which was dry. So you can see the big fall at the time went from 75p to 50-odd-p. But and that's understandable. They're changing things at Sound, but they already were. What they've done is that they're really concentrating hard on their Moroccan assets. They've got assets, at Tendrara, which they announced only yesterday. Somebody is financing a pipeline to produce the gas, which goes into the main GME pipeline. And of course, they've started to drill in a thing called Sidi Mokhtar. There's always something on the go with James Parsons and Sound. So nothing off. I think that we would expect maybe something to do with the remaining Italian assets, maybe something to do with the huge Moroccan shareholding support that they've got. So I'm happy. I think things are beginning to pick up nicely. The chartist would tell you that they've formed a nice base and are beginning to look better. I think there's still plenty to go for in Sound.
Understood. Premier Oil, again on the crib sheet, down. What is that? Down 36%. Since
yeah, I mean, Premier was a slightly surprising winner last year because they've spent the last 18 months or so in the negotiations about their huge debt pile. So the downside for Premier is it's still got $2.7 billion worth of debt, but the good news is that they've completely renegotiated it all for the longer term. But the good news is, operationally, this company is in fantastic nick, and they've got 3 or 4 big developments coming through, which will hopefully see off that debt in one way or the other. So they've got Catcher, which is the North Sea. We saw that the rig had sailed away from Singapore a couple of weeks ago. That'll be on site in the North Sea by the end of the year, and first oil is expected at the end of the year, and that is producing better than expected as well. They've also got a gas field in the southern North Sea called Tolmount. Now, that was a bit of a stroke of luck. They made an acquisition 18 months ago, and this came with it, and it just turned out to be an absolute beauty. But they were unsure of how they were going to pay for the development of it, given the debt. But they've gone in with an infrastructure fund, who will effectively, or two maybe, might actually pay for the real capex, the meaty capex, and take a tariff off it. So that's good. They've had a big discovery in Mexico called Zuma. They've got 25% of that, and that could be 800 million barrels. I think they'll probably sell that. They probably wouldn't agree at the moment, but I think that if they got an opportunity to sell it, they would, to lower the debt. And of course that brings Sea Lion. And Sea Lion, has been pushed back and back a bit. This is the billion-barrel discovery off the Falkland Islands. Up till now, it's just been in the too difficult box. The capex has been difficult. They've been carrying on with all the necessary engineering works and the feed work and so on. But this is a really important thing for Premier. In the early 2020s, this could produce certainly a quarter of Premier's operated work, and I think they can go ahead with it. And there's an article in the FT the other day where it seems like that the UK Export Finance are prepared to put up some of the funding for this, and that will probably get it over the line.
Understood. Let's move on to Faro Petroleum. Again,
yeah, I mean, Faro,
smidge since
Faro are without doubt the best explorer, certainly in the North Sea, in terms of our independence. Over the years, they have regularly turned in fantastic performance. They've got a really good portfolio of assets. Quite a lot of them are in the Norwegian North Sea. There's good tax breaks on that, and they've just announced a couple of quite nice discoveries, and one which is very close to existing infrastructure. I have absolutely no hesitation. I would sleep soundly at night knowing that I had Faro in my portfolio. Very well run, strongly financed, and without doubt, absolutely cracking exploration record.
Understood. Bowleven.
Bowleven's leaving. It's leaving the bucket list. It would, if I'd had the changes done in the middle of summer, it would have already gone. This is, as insurance parlance would be, it's in runoff. It was taken over effectively. There are 2 or 3 assets in there which in Africa which are being sold either to existing partners or other people, but it's in runoff. There's no longer term. Over the couple of years it's been the bucket list, hasn't quite delivered what I'd hoped it would, because I still think very highly of the African assets, one of which we'll come back to in a minute. But Bowleven will be gone when we make the changes.
Understood. Let's wrap up this segment. I can never pronounce this properly, so I'll leave that to you.
This is Analyst Resources. This is in Colombia, and it's a mystery to me why this stock has been underperforming so badly. But I think primarily you can put it down to the social position in Colombia, where since we've had all sorts of referendums and so on with the FARC, the previous terrorism group, and I think they've now actually got that sorted out. The government have come in, they've made it perfectly clear that they are fully behind this now. They had to cease production for a month in July. This is all down to the crops that they produce, i.e. they can't produce the naughty crops anymore, and they are being encouraged to produce more. But that's right in the middle of the Putumayo, which is where Amerisa work out. And so production has been slightly disappointing. A lot of people thought this OBA, which is the Ecuador pipeline might have been taking more than 5,000 barrels. But this week we've had the first monthly that says that they produced well in excess of 5,000, and on some peak days 10,000. They're in negotiations with the Ecuadorians and the operators, and are going to, in my view, perk that up quite dramatically. They've had a really big discovery in the Llanos Basin with ONGC, so I'm expecting, their target for production, which at the moment is 5,000 barrels a day. Short-term target is 7,000. Long-term target could be 10, 12,000 easily. I'm sure they'll make that. The market's been as disappointed as I have on this front, but we have good news.
We have good news.
John Wardle, who runs the business, he's the chief executive officer, and he's lives in Colombia, and he runs this business. Absolute superstar. I rate him extremely highly. He very rarely comes out of Colombia. He's coming out of Colombia
all the way to Core Castle to see the Malcy later on in September.
He has agreed to do an interview with me on the day of the results, which is the 25th of this month. I can't wait. He's a very exciting guy, and he'll tell us everything that's going on.
Malcy, thank you very much indeed. That wraps up part 1.
My pleasure.